So today we're going to be taking a look at a watch that is really kind of near to my heart, and it's one that when I heard the name, I had to get it. And let me explain why. As I've mentioned before a couple times, so my profession, my job is that I'm a missionary, and I generally we kind of split our time. My family and we split our time between here and in the United States, and in Japan is where we work and serve. And we've been working with some Baptist churches out there, and we've been working up in northeastern Japan in the area that was hit by the tsunami back in 2011. So the churches have been doing a lot of like relief work and follow-up work, and we've been kind of helping with some of that kind of ministry. When we go back, we're going to be helping to start a new church. But what does that have to do with watches? And what does that have to do with this particular watch that we're going to be taking a look at today? The watch that we're going to look at today was actually named after the city that I've been living in Japan for the last 5 years. So when I noticed that, I kind of really wanted to get it, and I saw the price drop on Amazon a little while ago, and I picked it up. So that's what we're going to look at today. Today we're looking at the Morioka from Momentum Watches. Let's take a look. So the Morioka, it's an interesting watch. It's a watch from Momentum Watch Company, and I'll give you a little bit of their history in a minute. But they tend to, they're most famous for making kind of really rugged watches, dive watches and field watches in particular. Most of their watches are quartz watches. This one is an automatic, and this is kind of, they bill it as a dress watch. And I don't think it quite fits the qualifications for a dress watch. It's a little too large for that. And but it's a very nice looking watch, very dressy looking piece, and yet at the same time, because it's from Momentum, it's very rugged, very tough, and I love that kind of balance between having this watch that it kind of looks and feels like a dress watch, and yet it's got a screw down crown, it's got 200-meter water resistance, sapphire crystal, amazing lume on the dial and the indices, and this one it has a Seiko NH39. Open heart movement on it, which also I really love. So this is a watch that it's one of my favorite watches that I have, if not my favorite. And we'll get into the review when we take a look at it. Again, it's named after the city of Morioka, which is where I've been living for the last 5 years in Japan. We're going to be going back there for a few weeks and then moving to a nearby city on the coast when we return to Japan. But Morioka, so the reason Momentum named it after Morioka, and I had no idea this, but Momentum claims that Morioka is where a lot of Japanese watch movements are manufactured, and that's so interesting. I'd love to, when I get back there, to try and check that out and see maybe which movements are manufactured there, because I didn't really start getting into watches until right around the time we came back to the States almost a year ago, and so I was never paying attention to the watch scene in our city, but apparently they make some movements in there, and I don't know. So this one, it has a Seiko NH39 movement in it. I have no idea if this is that would be so cool if Seiko actually has a factory in our city where they're manufacturing some of their watch movements, but I don't know that. So when we go back, I'll see if I can get some more information and track some of that down. But let's go ahead and get into the actual review of the watch and take a look, because it's a great watch, and if you can find it for a good price, I think it's well worth picking up. We'll get into all that too, but let's take a look at the watch. All right, let's start by taking a look at the specifications for this watch and the features. And I think it has a really interesting set of features. Again, because Momentum sort of classifies this as a dress watch. But let's start by reading you just a little blurb on this watch that they put out on their advertising material, because I think it kind of sums up sort of the character and spirit of this watch pretty well. So among the things they said it's designed for those who appreciate an elegant design, subtle details, and a fortified steel case. And I think that kind of really pretty aptly describes what this watch is and what they're going for. So what we have here, we have a watch that if you look at it from a distance, it appears to be very dressy. You would probably initially consider it a dress watch until you maybe held it in your hands, and you would notice a couple things about it. First is the size. It's a 44 millimeter diameter case, which is fairly large, and then it's 14 millimeters thick, which for me, I think that's far too large to really consider it a dress watch. That said, it has a very elegant look to it. So it looks like a dress watch, but it's not sized like a dress watch, I don't think. And then you get into more of the features, and you really start to wonder, what is this thing? So we're getting, a 200-meter water resistance, and they claim it's a tested 200-meter water resistance. So I'm assuming that they've actually subjected it to an actual pressure test to really verify that it could actually go 200 meters deep, which is, pretty impressive, for a watch that looks like a dress watch. It has a screw-down crown that at 4 o'clock, which makes it very comfortable to wear. It is screw-down crown. Comes with a sapphire crystal, and they build as a solid 316L solid stainless steel case. So you're getting a set of features that are, really. And then also everything's loomed. You get a loomed hands, and then all of the applied hour markers are also loomed, and it's a very bright loom. I believe it's super luminova. I'm not 100% sure on that. So getting some really nice features. Again, things that you typically wouldn't see in a dress watch. Things that tend to be more for like a good field watch or even a dive watch. And that's kind of what, another thing I saw that they bill this as is it's like an office to the beach watch, where conceivably if you have it on a waterproof band like the metal bracelet I have it here, you could wear it into the office, it wouldn't look out of place, and you could immediately go out to the beach and go swimming, surfing, or whatever, and not have to change watches. So I think that's just kind of a really cool set of features. It's something that I've really been looking for, a watch that's kind of like that it looks elegant, but it's really tough, and this really fit the bill. So just by features alone, it's a watch that I really like. Talking a little bit about the brand, I don't know a whole lot about Momentum, but one of the things that really attracted me is that they are kind of a North American-based brand. In fact, they have their factories. They're based in Canada, Vancouver, which is, kind of, I'm in California, so we're both West Coast, even though it's up in Canada. But, they're not only do they have their offices in Canada, their factories are both in Washington State and in Canada. So it's actually assembled here in North America. The movement inside this watch, I didn't mention earlier, is a Seiko NH38 open heart movement. So really solid, good movement, hacking, hand winding, 40-hour power reserve, and you get the cool open heart look. But the actual watch is manufactured in North America, which is another thing that I think is really cool. Again, I was sort of on this hunt to track down some good American-based watches. This one's not quite American, but it's pretty close. It's really hard to find these days, a watch that's actually manufactured in the U.S. And so this one it could have been manufactured in Washington State. It could have been manufactured up in Canada. I'm not sure exactly which of their factories it was made at. But Momentum, I started looking more into the brand. I really appreciate it. They offer, typically some really great prices for some kind of unique takes on some of the classic, field watches, dive watches. A lot of them do have that kind of balance between ruggedness and elegance, which I think is really cool. And yeah, some really great prices. I was also really interested in their Torpedo dive watch for a while. I was thinking about picking one of those up. Most of their watches are quartz-based watches, as I mentioned before. They do have a couple of automatics that look pretty cool. But it's a brand that I'm sort of getting to know a little bit, and this being my first impression with them, it's a good one. I really like it. Now, the name of this watch, again, that was one of the things that really first drew me to it. It just really caught me off guard because the city, of Morioka, it's not a very well-known city. I haven't met anybody else here in the States that's ever heard of it before. Even in Japan, it's not, a very large city. It's not a very prestigious city. It's the capital city of Iwate Prefecture, but that's a very rural agricultural prefecture in Japan. It's an area that's incredibly beautiful, very rugged, very, very mountainous, lots of forests. And the city of Morioka is kind of nestled up in the mountains in the shadow of Mount Iwate, which is this really large volcano that really dominates the skyline surrounding it. Just a really beautiful city, and lots of hot springs all over the place, rivers, and 4 beautiful seasons. And I actually did a little bit of research since the intro to try and find out more about the watchmaking history there. So Seiko does have a manufacturing place up there. I'm not sure if it's a factory or what, but there's Morioka Seiko Instruments Incorporated is right outside of Morioka. So Morioka is the capital city. A neighboring city is called Shizukuishi, which is it's a place I've been to many times. I've been there to view the cherry blossoms because they're very beautiful there. And Seiko also has a Shizukuishi watch studio, just in that same, I think it's connected to the same building, but the Shizukuishi watch studio is actually where they make and design some of the Grand Seiko. So some of their top of the line models are designed and manufactured like 20 minutes from where I was living for the last 5 years. So again, it's just, I never even knew that. So I'm kind of hoping to kind of get some more peeks of it when I go back, because I'll be in the area a lot when we go back to Japan. But Seiko, I was reading their website, they said the reason they chose that location is because of the natural beauty in the area that they felt would really give their watchmakers an inspiration, just a sense of harmony with nature, which is something that's very important to Japanese. And so Seiko, I think that they picked that location is so cool, and I'm glad that someone appreciated it, because I was coming from California, where everything's it's a beautiful place in California, but it's very desert climate once you get away from the coasts. The beaches are beautiful, but it's sort of the same wonderful climate all year round. To me, going to a place like Morioka, where they had these 4 beautiful seasons, and you'd get the white landscape in the winter, and then the spring would burst through with always the first to come would not be the green, but the flowers. You'd get the cherry blossoms and all the other flowers blooming, followed by summer was just this incredibly deep green everywhere, and then the fall, just amazing fall colors as well. So it's just a really beautiful place. And so it's kind of cool to see that Seiko picked up on that, and they put their studios there. And then to see a company like Momentum trying to kind of borrow some of that by naming this watch after it was just kind of a cool thing to me, and just a neat story again to see that this city that I had kind of come to love and live in and be a part of had a watch named after it by a North American company. It's just such a random thing to see it, and I'm so glad I was able to pick up this watch because of that. But all of that aside, this watch, it's one that just on features and specifications alone, I've really come to appreciate. It really does have that great balance of sort of elegance and toughness. If I wanted to compare it to anything, again, I don't have a lot of experience with higher-end watches, but from the research that I've done, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Rolex Explorer, so it might be sort of borrowing some of those aesthetics. You get the Arabic numerals at 12, 6, 9, and 3. You're getting a great lume dial. You're getting something that's kind of an elegant-looking watch, but also very tough and rugged. Or maybe maybe a closer comparison would be sort of a larger, more American or North American Seiko Alpinist. You're not getting the green and gold color scheme, but it's kind of a similar thing where you have this watch that's more of like a field watch at heart, but it's kind of an elegant look to it. Price-wise, it's fairly comparable to the Alpinist, and I'll get in that a little bit. But yeah, so maybe something along those lines. And this is the first watch that I've gotten in this, with the metal bracelets, a $475 watch, so its retail price is higher up there. It's above what I typically get. So I don't have a lot of experience looking at watches in this price tier. This is the first one I've gotten. I have noticed that the specifications and the finishing on it does seem a notch above any of the other watches that I have. So I definitely think that it's probably worth the price that they're asking for it. Again, it was outside of my budget. I saw it drop down on Amazon for whatever reason. The prices on it suddenly dropped down to, I think, $130 when I picked it up. So this is a watch that when I saw it, I was drawn to it. I wanted to get it, but I thought, I won't be able to afford that because it's outside of my price range. And then suddenly it dropped down I was able to get it, so I was really happy about that. But yeah, again, you're getting a really great set of features. I love the detail on the dial. It's got this great texture on the dial, which is really cool. The indices are really well done. They light up very brightly. It's a nice blue lume, and they're definitely applied, so it gives a little bit more depth. And then you get the open heart in there to be able to see into it. And this was another thing that really drew my attention was, I don't have a lot of automatic watches in my collection, so I kind of I wanted to get an automatic watch that I would be able to really know that it was an automatic watch. So having that little open heart and being able to see the inner workings of it, get a peek of it every time I check the time, as well as having that really nice display case back on the back where you can really look in. Since I don't have a lot of automatic watches in my collection, I think that's pretty cool to be able to get those features where the automatic, the movement really takes a little bit of a noticeable point in the dial and in looking at it. So for me, that just worked out really well. Some of the negatives for it, so the things that I have a problem with, I do think it's too tall. I would have, and too large. I would have preferred it to be more like a 40 millimeter size and a little bit thinner. I don't know if they could have done that and still kept the ruggedness that they were going after. So that might have been a problem there. For me, it's not that big of a deal. The size, works pretty well on my size wrist. The thing that's maybe more of a challenge is that the bracelet that it comes on, I really like the look of it, but because of the way it attaches to the lugs, and because the lug width is, the lug to lug is fairly large, it's a 50.75 millimeter lug to lug. On the bracelet, it kind of almost sticks out a little bit, even on my wrist, and I have like a 7.5 inch wrist. If I put it on a leather strap or on like a non-fitted bracelet, it tends to wear much better around the wrist, but on the included one, because it's that fitted end links on the bracelet, it sort of sticks out a little bit and almost is almost sticks out even on my wrist, on a 7.5 inch wrist. So that I'm not a big fan of. I think I can just barely get away with it without it looking too odd. But that's, again, that's kind of a minor thing compared to everything else that I do like about it. Price-wise, what we're talking about, again, the retail price is $475. It's hard for me to say, yes, this is definitely worth that price because I don't have a lot of experience in other watches in that price range. Again, maybe the nearest you could compare it to would be an Alpinist. And if you've got the same watch, you can get on a leather strap for, I think, $400. The Alpinist right now is coming in on Amazon around $475. So on the leather strap, which is more comparable to the Alpinist, you get it at $75 cheaper. You're going to get, obviously it's going to take a hit because I think Seiko is a much more established brand, especially in this price point, than Momentum is. They're very different watches, and they're definitely, you could be a very, different personality wanting something more like this Momentum versus an Alpinist. They do look very different with the different color schemes and things, but I think they both kind of have that idea of it being like a dressy looking field watch, and that's more what I would look at this. I don't think it's like a tough dress watch. I think it's more of like a dressy field watch, and I think that's what the Alpinist is too. And again, they're in similar price tiers. But again, not having ever been able to see an Alpinist in person, it's hard for me to say, the fit and finishing is at the same level. But again, I think this is definitely a step above fit and finishing wise any other watch that I have in my collection. So all that said, I'm very happy with the watch. And I know this review has kind of gone a little bit longer than usual, but for me, this is a watch that it's probably my favorite in my collection right now, so I'll spend a little bit more time on it. But let's go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll finish up the video. All right, so that has been my review of the Morioka from Momentum Watches. I'll give you guys some links down in the description. Please like and subscribe. Really helps me out if you guys subscribe. Gives me some motivation to keep doing this. And this might be, I might be taking a little bit of a break after this video comes out because, again, we're moving to Japan soon. So if you don't hear from me for a while, that's why. But hopefully next time you guys see me, we'll be, in a new location. I can show you guys a little bit about our town, but it'll probably take us a couple weeks to a month to get set up over there. It's going to be kind of crazy, so bear with me. But definitely hit that subscribe button if you want to keep up to date. And hopefully from now on, I'll get a chance to maybe start bringing in some more Japanese watches and examining what the watch scene is like over in Japan. We're going to a really small town out there, so it's probably not going to be like Tokyo where you're going to have all the great shops and things. But we'll see how it goes. I think Japan's a great place to be if you're interested in watches. And as it's sort of a new hobby for me, I'm interested in getting back there and kind of seeing some of the things that I can find out. And we'll see if we can find some good deals over there as well. But thanks again for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time.